Good afternoon, everyone. Let's try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. That's more like it. Thank you all for being here. This is a side event that is being put on by the WIM ExCom. And I assume that because you're here, you know what all these acronyms mean. But in case you don't, it's the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, and it's the Executive Committee, so we say the WIM ExCom. My name is Leanne Roper. I hail from the beautiful country, Jamaica. Woohoo! I am a member of the ExCom, and my task today is to help us in moderating the session. We're here under the theme or the topic, next phase of the WIM ExCom, from policy guidance to solution on the ground. Perhaps it would help if we had a little bit of a background. The WIM was established to address loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climate change, including extreme events and slow onset events. And this was at COP19 in 2013. It is the main catalyzer under the UNFCCC process for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage associated with climate change, as well as strengthening synergies and coherence of such efforts across a broad range of communities of practice and stakeholders. It also helps in enhancing knowledge, action, and support. At our side event today, we will look at exploring how the ExCom and its expert groups can catalyze support for implementing solutions on the ground. It will also give an opportunity to the ExCom to introduce its new work plan, and it's the 5-year rolling work plan. We will shorten work plan for now. It will showcase approaches and challenges faced by developing countries in responding to loss and damage associated with climate change impacts, and how the ExCom and its expert groups can best respond to the needs of vulnerable countries. Today, we will hear from one of the members of the ExCom who will reflect on the new work plan and ways in which the new work plan can be catalyzed to support countries. We will also have a chance to hear from 4 country representatives. They are from a diverse set of countries, and they will identify approaches being implemented at the country level, as well as challenges relating to responding to loss and damage, in particular in the context of human mobility and comprehensive risk management approaches. We'll also have an opportunity to hear from members of our expert groups. 2 are joining on the podium, and you will hear more later on. They will reflect on the new plans of actions of the Task Force on Displacement, and because we love acronyms, the TFD, and also the Technical Expert Group on Comprehensive Risk Management, or the TEG CRM. We want this to be interactive, everyone. Interactive. Before we begin in earnest, however, allow me to do a little ice breaking. I know we're in Egypt and there's no ice, but you know, ice breaking doesn't hurt. We're going to be showing some questions, and we would like for you, the participants, to give your answers to these questions. They are coming up in 2 seconds. We may need some IT support. Yes, we do apologize. We will give you an opportunity because I saw there was eagerness to contribute to those questions. Am I right? Yes. So in the interest of time, we will move on. Ah, there we go. You can scan the QR code, but you can also see one of the questions there. What areas of comprehensive risk management do countries need support on? Once again, what areas of comprehensive risk management do countries need support on? So get those phones out, scan the QR code, and the responses will be reflected later on in the program. Without further ado, let me give the floor to Ms. Gemma Tanner. She will introduce the work plan, and remember it's the 5-year rolling work plan. We spent quite a bit of time on this work plan, and we trust that you had an opportunity to look through, but if you did not, fret not. She will walk you through, and we trust that you will have a better appreciation of what is contained therein. So I think you can either stay there or come to the podium, but please make her welcomed.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Great. Sort of? Okay. Thank you Leanne for that introduction. I'm Gemma Tanner, I sit on the WIM ExCom, I'm from the UK. And as Leanne said, this 5-year rolling work plan was developed with a lot of hard work, and including from my fellow WIM ExCom members, of which some are in the audience, and I can spot Camilla, Kaiser, Stella, Frodo, so if you give us a wave, that would be great. But not just us, there was a huge amount of input from the observers and expert group members as well, so thanks to everyone who was involved. So the 5-year rolling work plan, it guides the implementation of the WIM, and it sets the direction in 5-year increments, hence rolling work plan. And so in September this year, we developed the second of the WIM ExCom's 5-year rolling plan, and this covers the period 2023 to 2027. It maintains the 5 strategic work streams from the first work plan, which are slow onset events, non-economic losses, action and support, comprehensive risk management approaches, and human mobility. And when it comes to the focus under these work streams, the second rolling work plan has really meant to be a clear shift from information collection and initial scoping, which was a big focus of the last work plan, into really understanding how we catalyze solutions on the ground. So activities under these substantive work streams are complemented with 20 cross-cutting activities which are captured in the plan. And when we consider how to take forward the work plan, there are a number of aspects that we wanted to consider in a cross-cutting manner across all the work streams and activities. So I will just highlight those. So the first is gender, in particular within the scope of the 5-year enhanced Lima work programme on gender and its gender action plan. The second critical area, cross-cutting area, is a real focus on groups at the front line of climate change, such as Indigenous peoples and local communities. The third is science. We've all been reading the IPCC reports that we want to ensure that they factor in across all our activities. The next is we really focus on strengthening collaboration across all the constituted bodies. And accessibility, I think that's an incredibly important one, that we ensure any products that are produced from our work are accessible. So to give you some focus and examples of the expected delivery from the new work plan, I wanted to just focus on a couple of areas. The first critical one is on technical guides. So this work plan has a really strong focus on implementing the mandate to develop technical guides in a response to the request by COP25. And these activities on developing these guides will be done in collaboration with the thematic expert groups and will cover sections such as risk, long-term risk assessments, approaches, available resources for supporting approaches and monitoring systems. There will also be a focus on activities for promoting and disseminating these technical guides to target audiences to ensure they're getting out to the right people, as well as making sure there's a focus on facilitating capacity building and training in relation to application of these technical guides, as well as other knowledge products that may be produced. So I just wanted to highlight that this mandate relating to technical guides has already been answered by 2 plans of actions from 2 of our new expert groups. In particular, the expert group on action and support. This group has a dedicated activity to develop user-friendly technical guides on topics in relation to action and support, which will cater to specific country contexts and to different types of climate impacts. Also, the expert group on non-economic losses also has a dedicated activity. Well, it has 2. One is on developing technical guides in respect to its own thematic area, but there's also an additional activity which is a collaboration with the Task Force on Displacement, and this is focused on delivering a technical guide on averting, minimising and addressing non-economic losses in the context of human mobility. The second area to highlight is we want to ensure that there's a strong focus on the work plan being more responsive to country level needs. We want to ensure that there are activities on compiling information, identifying gaps, preparing guidance tools and methodologies for assessing needs in relation to averting, minimise and addressing loss and damage at multiple levels. And secondly, ensure there's activity on developing tools that will allow us to integrate, or countries to integrate information, again, on averting, minimising, addressing loss and damage, and also looking at how to mainstream them into national planning and policy making processes. And so finally, just a word on collaboration and the importance of collaboration. The ExCom, through this new work plan, will also continue to foster engagement with a wide range of stakeholders and communities of practice, and we will work hard to explore synergies to catalyse concrete solutions on the ground, which at the end of the day is what it's all about. So this new work plan, it provides a strong basis to guide the implementation of the functions of the Warsaw International Mechanism, but it's a rolling work plan, and it also maintains the flexibility to respond to the evolving needs and concerns of developing countries which are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So with that, I hope that's enough introduction to give you a flavour of the work plan, and I will hand back to Leanne to go ahead with the rest of the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Gemma. I hope that gave a good overview of the hard work that we put into developing the work plan. At the end of the day, the work plan is to help countries. It's all about countries. And we're therefore very pleased that we have 4 country representatives here with us today. We have representatives from Bangladesh, Egypt, Dominican Republic, and Mozambique. I will invite them in that order, and so I will therefore first invite Mr. Mirza Shaukat Ali, Director, Climate Change and International Convention in the Department of Environment in Bangladesh. Sir, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for giving me the floor. So, I am not an expert on Warsaw International Mechanism loss and damage, but at the national level, I implement like adaptation activities, mitigation initiatives. So I am involved with National Adaptation Plan, National Determined Contribution, and other activities UNFCCC that emanates from UNFCCC processes. And you know, in Bangladesh, we are a highly populated country. 165 million people live in 47,000 square kilometer area. So if I phrase this, all the population of the globe, if we take all the population of the globe in the United States, even the density of that country will not be higher than Bangladesh. So you can imagine the density of Bangladesh population. So our focus is on displacement of people. That is a major challenge for the country. So let me share some of our challenges. According to the German Watch, Bangladesh is considered the 7th most vulnerable countries in the world. And according to recent estimates, by 2050, 1 in every 45 people in the world and 1 in 7 people in Bangladesh will be displaced by climate change. So you can imagine the challenges that Bangladesh will face in terms of displacement issues. According to Bangladesh National Adaptation Plan, which we have just submitted on 31st October this year, by 2050, 19.9 million people will be displaced from our coastal areas, which is half of entire South Asia. Our coastal population is 39 million population, which is out of the total 165 million population of the country. And if you take into consideration, I think these 39 million population is combined size of this population is much higher than the small island developing states. So it's a huge challenge for a country like Bangladesh. We have conducted sea level rise studies, our Department of Environment under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. We have conducted a sea level rise study recently, and we have found that on an annual basis, 3.8 to 5.8 millimeter sea level is rising in our coastal areas. And if we take into consideration 50 centimeter, 62 centimeter, and 95 centimeter sea level rise will inundate 11%, 12%, and 15% coastal areas of the country. And sea level rise may inundate new unprotected coastal areas of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is actually protected by 139 polders in the coastal areas. It's earthen polder, but it is still protecting the country. And the length of these 139 polder is 3,450, about 3,450 kilometer. We have taken some measures that I already mentioned in our National Adaptation Plan. We have identified various adaptation measures. We have identified 113 adaptation interventions that is required to make the country climate resilient by 2050. So during the next 27 years, from 2023 to 2050, our total requirement will be 230 billion US dollar for these NAP initiatives that we have identified. And we have certainly identified few displacement related activities there. So I will give an example of these two. One is protection and enhanced resilience of climate migrants with particular focus on gender and disability. The second is development of city climate action plan for major urban cities covering peri-urban areas and resilience of urban poor communities and climate migrants. You know, I have already mentioned that migration is a challenge in Bangladesh, and we are accommodating a huge population already. So we want to address their challenges as well. The country has tried to make the country resilient, so we have a lot of initiatives, and we have a dedicated Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Climate Change Trust Fund, where government has allocated $480 million. The combined amount is much higher than the financial resources that we have accessed from the international process, UNFCCC process, GCF, Adaptation Fund, and LDC Fund. So under our own initiative, what we have done, I just want to mention few of these. We have constructed additional 353 kilometer embankment, 591 kilometer canal excavation, and then we have 2,123 kilometer river excavation and dredging. 3 out of 10 major rivers in the world has gone through Bangladesh. That has made the country very vulnerable to flooding. We have developed 12 stress-tolerant crop varieties, and we have constructed different cyclone shelters, 4,530 cyclone shelters. And also we have constructed 139 5-story building accommodating 442,608 landless families there. We have also constructed independent houses, 117,000 houses, and in the third phase we are going to construct additional 65,000 more houses. So these are the initiatives that the government has taken independently to protect the people from climate disasters. And I want to mention that we have also developed a national strategy. We call it National Strategy on the Management of Disaster and Climate-Induced Internal Displacement, which we unveiled in January 2020. And there we have recognized, I want to read out these few lines. The government recognizes that displacement have grave implications for the rights and entitlement of individuals and communities who experience displacement. Affected person may face multiple human rights challenges in the aftermath of disasters. For example, their safety and security is compromised when they move to new places. They face gender-based violence, unequal access to assistance, basic goods and services, and discrimination in aid provision. Abuse, neglect, and exploitation of children, family separation, particularly for children, older peoples, persons with disability. So we have mentioned this in our national strategy. So we clearly understand the challenges and the violence that is faced by families, especially after the disaster. That is a huge challenge. I don't want to linger my discussion. I just want to flag 2-3 more points, and then I will stop. The guidelines has considered that 3 aspects how we can protect this displacement issue: prevent displacement, protection during displacement, and durable solution to displacement. We have also developed a national task force for on displacement, and also we have considered funding arrangement as well for these displaced people. As I have already mentioned that Bangladesh is a very densely populated, and it is a huge challenge for the country. In addition, during the last 2-3 years, 1.1 million Myanmar people has fled into Bangladesh due to war in Myanmar, and we have given shelter to them. And this is really a huge burden for the country, which is already accommodating 165 million population. And these Myanmar refugees, for their survival, has become involved in different kinds of drugs and other kind of abuses, and has destabilized our southeastern part of the country, and that has created really a societal problem for the country. So with this, I conclude my intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And then next, we will have Ms. Omnia Higasi, Senior Adaptation Officer, COP27 Unit, in the Ministry of Environment in Egypt. Please make her welcome.
Thank you so much. So speaking about the deltas and the impact of climate change on the different deltas, and as Bangladesh, they have a mega delta with heavily populated people. We also have this issue. So the Nile Delta is one of the top 3 most vulnerable in the world. This is, of course, due to it's too low. It's a low-lying land, and it's very vulnerable to the sea level rise and extreme weather events, mainly coming from the sea, like we suffer from storm surge and so on. So we have a success story that I would like to share, that we started to work on protection of the main low-lying lands along the delta and the coastal zones. It's a project that we take support from the GCF of about $30 million. And the total budget of the project is 100 million, and the rest is funded from the national budget, because actually it's something we have to do, so we have to pay for it to save our people and our land. So actually we started having like soft measures that we would involve the local population in implementing this project. So it's actually a locally led adaptation. And also we try to use the nature-based solutions. So it's not only like hard structures that would affect the land there and make there is no use of the land, as you know, like the regular structures, strong ones. No, so actually we started building sand dunes using the from the nature there, and using the local knowledge of how they are building sand dunes to protect their agriculture lands. And then we didn't want to affect the ecosystem there, so we started to replant the plants that are existing there, which some of them, they have medical benefits, and the local communities are using them. So we used the knowledge of the local communities, and we tried as much as we can not to be solving a problem and having another problem of affecting ecosystems or local population or so on. And actually it is a really successful project that we want to expand, because it's only on 5 areas, like the most vulnerable ones. What we still have the whole delta and the whole north coast of like 3,600 kilometers is affected by sea level rise. So this is one of the cases that we are trying to reduce the losses due to climate change, and this is like a slow onset event that maybe does not seem as hazardous as the extreme events, but still it's affecting people. Like we have around 8.2 of the cultivated lands in the delta will be lost due to the sea level rise. And speaking about that, this means like 30% of the food productivity coming from the delta, and the delta actually we rely on it for providing us food. So it's affecting food security, it's affecting jobs, because we started to see deterioration in the quality of the land due to the saltwater intrusion. Also it causes displacement, as in Bangladesh. So people tend to leave their places because it's not good to live in anymore, or they try to shift their activities. If they are like relying on agriculture or so on, they start like migrating to other places. And of course this causes pressure on the other cities that they were not heavily populated. They started to be more populated and affecting the resources there and infrastructure and so on. When we talk about the challenges and how I think like the ExCom, we can benefit from their role in knowledge dissemination. So we still have lack of data. So in order to identify the key most vulnerable areas and like to avoid spending resources that are very few on lands that are not that vulnerable and leaving other lands. So we still need to have this good quality of data. And also, we don't have the enough expertise that would like conduct work on ground, or even like the scientists that would be measuring the effect of the sea level rise on those lands. We also have shortage of finance. So as I said, like the grant from the GCF, it's only like 1/3 of the total budget of the project, and the rest is by the national budget, which is extra burden on our national budgets. We have other priorities to think about for health and agriculture and so on. But due to climate change, and it's so urgent, and the impacts of it are so severe, so we started shifting our national budgets towards facing climate change. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And then next, we have Mr. Delio Rincon, Climate Change and Sustainable Development Specialist, Ministry of Economy, Planning and Development, Dominican Republic. Please make him welcome.
Can I? Okay. Thanks. Well, first of all, good afternoon for everyone. Thanks for ExCom for inviting our delegation to this important event to learn about the new action plan for the next 5 years of the WIM ExCom for loss and damage, as well as the work plans of each expert groups with the technical expert group on comprehensive risk management, CRM, for the work that we are carrying out, but also with the task force on displacement for the challenge we will be facing as a small island developing state vulnerable to sea level rise. Recently, Dominican Republic has made one risk and vulnerability index at level all its municipalities in order to develop the baseline for municipalities' plans for resilience to climate change and risk management. My country is modifying the technical standard for public investment to incorporate climate change and risk management criteria for public investment to be resilient to climate change and all associated risks. In short, it is about incorporating climate change and the analysis of the associated risks in the entire public planning and investment system. In those matters, the Dominican Republic has been looking at the guides and hopes to see more from the technical expert group on comprehensive risk management, CRM. The first one, lesson learning in organizing workshops with public and private sector institutions to adapt the WIM World Action Plan to the national circumstance and to each municipality in the country for effective implementation. This will require the technical training on public servants linked to the planning areas so that all risks are considered in national, regional, and sectoral plans. Second, use guidance for elaborating a risk analysis methodology for national system on planning and public investment that links all the institutions of the central government. Third, use guidance to provide the national public investment system with site analysis methodology analysis of the place or location for public investment projects in the territories. 4, guidance would be also help to prepare a national study with the objective of defining the best governance option for the implementation of the National Disaster Risk Plan. 5, the Dominican Republic has recently approved the land management law. We would like to receive assistance to incorporate risk management and climate change in the territorial ordering plans of the municipalities, clarifying the links between risk management and land use planning. We believe that work of the ExCom will have great value in making our country more climate resilient. That's it. Thank you very much on behalf of my country.
Thank you very much. And then we have Miss Sarah Matches, who is from the Institutional Climate Change Focal, or who is the Institutional Climate Change Focal Point, National Institute for Disaster Management and Risk Reduction in Mozambique. Please make her welcome.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you to the ExCom for inviting us to this site event. First of all, I would like to say that I have an honor to speak in behalf of Mozambique in the same year that our president, His Excellency Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, was nominated the champion for disaster risk reduction from the African Union. Mozambique is a high vulnerable country because have a very large coast, about 2,000.5 kilometers of coast, and is also a country located downstream of 9 river basins from the neighbor countries. So we are prone to cyclones, we are prone to floods, we are prone to droughts as well. The disaster management approach in our country is multi-sectoral and involves all disaster risk management cycle. To address loss and damage and to address the Article 8 of the Paris Agreement, we would like to share about our legal framework and policies. First of all, we would like to mention the Disaster Management Law from 2020. And second, the Master Plan for Disaster Risk Reduction 2017-2030. This master plan is aligned with the Sendai framework with disaster risk reduction, as well as aligned with the Paris Agreement and also the National Strategy for Climate Change. The third policy is the decree which established the Disaster Management Fund. This means that the government allocates 0.1 of its total budget to address issues related to the response to disasters, as well as recovery and reconstruction. We have also the strategy for the management of internally displacement. This is a strategy to ensure protection, assistance, and social reintegration, as well as rapid recovery and normalization of the displaced people. We have also the decree approving the operationalization of the operationalization and regulations of the integrated platform for dissemination and communication of early warning information for floods and cyclones. As we know, currently even the disaster management platforms and climate change platforms, they are talking a lot about the importance of the early warning systems. We have also the financial disaster protection plan to strengthen the state's financial response to disaster and post-disaster intervention. So we have also some projects taking place. We would like to mention the Disaster Risk Management and Resilience Program, 2019-2024. This is to create the climate resilience of vulnerable people and as well the educational infrastructures in the high-risk areas. We have also the integrated project to strengthen the capacity of rural communities to address challenges interlinked to climate changes, rural poverty, food insecurity, land degradation, and water retention and supply. We have also the strategy and action plan for the revitalization of the local committees for disaster management, the integrated early warning system focus in droughts. I think I have no time, and I would like to thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, hello. Are you hearing me? Okay, good. Thank you to all our country representatives for sharing. I think what is clear is they are vulnerable, but they're doing what they can about it. And we certainly appreciate the wealth of information that was shared. So thank you very much. I heard much coming out in relation to comprehensive risk management and displacement. And so the next section where we will be talking about these two areas, I'm sure our two experts were quite happy listening to those presentations. So we will have a representative from the Task Force on Displacement, otherwise called? Remember, this is interactive, everyone. This is interactive. The Task Force on Displacement, otherwise called, and also the Technical Expert Group on Comprehensive Risk Management, otherwise called, there we go. So first, I will invite Mr. Sonke Kreft, who is the Executive Director from the Munich Climate Insurance Initiative, and who is a member of the TEG-CRM. So please make him welcome.
That's very nice. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to present a little bit about the work of the TEG-CRM. Just as a background, the different expert working groups have been launched throughout the years. The TEG-CRM, the Technical Expert Group on Comprehensive Risk Management, was founded in 2018 to support the work of the ExCom on various issues related to comprehensive risk management, from risk reduction to risk retention to risk transfer and sharing and transformational approaches. And with that type of mandate, actually supporting all the work from minimizing loss and damage to actually addressing loss and damage. So in terms of its organizational setup and the different experts that are represented in the group, we have experts from UN agencies, like the Office of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR. We have the WMO present, the United Nations University. We do have also country experts and independent experts, for example, from the Pacific Community. We have the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. We have humanitarian actors like the World Food Programme. We do have also technical experts from civil society and think tanks like CARE or like the IASA, International Institute for Applied System Analysis, just to name a few. I've seen, in terms of fellow members of the group, I think Amir, I've seen him before, if you can quickly wave. He's a member. I don't see him right now. Okay, good. I hope he will be back. Yeah, and so we have been active since 2019. Previously, we had a plan of action. We were looking at probably 20 plus activities, which we fully implemented, even in COVID, in the COVID situation, under COVID conditions. We had a few delays, but overall, I'm happy to say that we delivered on the previous plan of action and also passed on the proceedings of this to the ExCom and to the wider community. And now the challenge was to create actually a new plan of action. The group came together in, I think, July this year. And we had a little bit of an overarching discussion. I mean, the challenge was quite clear. We want to serve the countries, but we also need to look at the urgency of the task. And we also wanted to frame some of the elements of the work, for example, in the work of the IPCC that has just recently been announced. And with that also in this kind of growing awareness of the inadequacy of current practice and also the protection gaps that exist. And I think these relate to all of the agencies that are present in the group, to the humanitarian sector, to disaster risk management, disaster risk reduction, and others. So in terms of the approach we took, the new plan of action also needs to be, of course, forward-looking. It needs to be open to external input. So I'm very happy for this event today. And I listened also to the previous interventions. And I think this is also the spirit we need to have. So we actually scaled down a little bit of the number of activities in order to be able to accommodate also a future dialogue and future activities. And we also wanted to tease out specific deliverables that help address current gaps and limitations of systems. So for example, looking at disaster risk finance, looking at gaps in the humanitarian field, looking at gaps in social protection mechanism, just to name a few. If I can look at if I can critique our previous work, I have to say we did a lot of individual deliverables by individual experts and organizations. So we wanted to change that a little bit, and so we created overarching buckets and then thought about how can we come together on key themes. And just to give you some of these themes, we will work on frontiers and emerging issues, picking up the work of the IPCC sixth assessment report, translating it to the field of comprehensive risk management and also identifying gaps. We will look at the development and application of comprehensive risk management and how it can also inform or how it can be implemented in risk-informed planning. Also looking into the interlinkage to national adaptation plans. We will look concretely on the options and solutions that exist. We look at climate risk assessment and climate services in this space. We look at humanitarian perspectives on climate risk, on social protection, and we also want to look at climate and disaster impact modeling, monitoring. And these are like the general buckets. As I said, they are like individual activities. You can read that in the ExCom report to the COP, in the annex. With that, I think I can conclude only to say that the spirit has changed a little bit. Our previous plan of action, we more or less developed it as a group. And now there are many more expert groups under the ExCom. So we also need to talk together. Some of these deliverables really are very close to each other, and we need to work together. So we want to have that conversation. We also want to have that conversation with the ExCom itself. And it's also quite clear that, for example, the question around technical guides is it's a question that came actually from this process. So we are open to that, and we expect also like possible future activities emanating from it. And with that, I pass to my colleague to report on the proceedings of the next group.
Wait, I think she...
Thank you. But perhaps, if you don't mind, I could introduce. Thanks, Sanke. And next we have Mr. Manuel Marquez Pereira. I'm hoping I'm not butchering your name. He's head of the Migration, Environment, and Climate Change Division at the IOM and a member of the TFD. Please, the floor is yours.
I need to add a few more steps to my day. We don't walk enough through the pavilions. Thank you so much, first of all, for the invite to represent the TFD, and I'll have some brief remarks to all of you on these. First, it's a pleasure to speak today here on behalf of the TFD Task Force on Displacement, if we are going on breaking down the abbreviations under the WIM ExCom. As you may know, the TFD has 14 expert members, including UN agencies such as UNHCR, ILO, UNDP, but also civil society, IFRC, Refugees International, the PDD, and member states. We are also actively supported by 4 ExCom members that act as our co-facilitators, and I would like to appreciate Maud, Igor, Isa, and Sumaya, respectively from Canada, CAR, Sweden, and Sudan. Without them, the work would not be able to proceed. We are now at the 3rd work plan of the TFD, and we want to congratulate the member states for maintaining the focus on this important issue of displacement in the context of climate change. I want to start by reminding us how far we have come without forgetting where we need to go. We are on the 15th year of human mobility and climate change nexus being discussed in the context of climate change negotiations under UNFCCC. The IPCC first raised this issue leading to displacement in its 1990 report, Climate Change IPCC Impact Assessments, and at that point warned policymakers that the gravest effects of climate change may be those on human migration, as millions are displaced by shoreline erosion, coastal flooding, and severe drought. So now, 32 years since that acknowledgement, in 2022, there is no doubt that the 6th assessment report of IPCC this year has strongly showed the unequivocal link between human mobility and climate change. Despite multiple IPCC references to human mobility considerations, the issue only entered in the UNFCCC negotiations when focus began to shift to adaptation issues following COP13 in Bali, Indonesia in 2007. With the adoption of the Bali Action Plan and the ad hoc working group on long-term cooperative action. In December 2008, during COP14 in Poznań, Poland, the same working group included references to human mobility in its assembly text, which was drafted to aid the future negotiations. The first official side event dedicated to the Nexus was also held at COP14 in 2008. As by comparison, COP27 in 2022, we have now counted over 50 events dedicated to human mobility and climate change. I think we get everyone's attention by now, but more needs to be done. Human mobility issues have been included in the draft negotiated text, discussed subsequently in other COPs, and integrated into the loss and damage work stream. More importantly, at COP24, states welcomed the task force recommendations for integrated approaches to avert, minimize, and address displacement related with the adverse effects of climate change. A similar process has been ongoing in the migration policy field, going back to several state-led initiatives as the Bern Initiative, the Nansen Initiative, the Global Forum for Migration and Development, the Migrants in Countries in Crisis Initiative, and culminating in the Global Compacts for Migrants and Refugees. What we have heard from Bangladesh and Mozambique is a reality of today, not of tomorrow, that all of these policies help to settle. I would add from my experience that Bangladesh Cyclone Preparedness Program and its evacuation centers network are an excellent example of how early warning systems save lives and minimizes displacement. But also, Mozambique relocation initiatives have enabled durable solutions to climate-displaced populations, allowing the preservation of assets and livelihoods, and at the same time supporting to avert and address displacement. Such practices, combined with the innovative policies these countries are establishing, offer a comprehensive approach that we all can learn from, and we must scale and multiply. But the task force is also this year on its third action plan from 2022 to 2024. In the past 15 years, the procedural groundwork was done, the science was substantiated and shared. States requested work on these, they made commitments to address it, and endorsed recommendations. The implementation of this new lean plan of action will also be guided by the following overarching objectives: contributing to the implementation of the WIM as recommendations as they relate to human mobility associated with the impacts of climate change, by enhancing knowledge and understanding of comprehensive risk management approaches, strengthening dialogue, coordination, coherence, and synergies that enhance action and support, including finance, technology, and capacity building. But maximizing synergies and capitalizing on the added value of the TFD as a convening body that is very well positioned to bring together a broad range of stakeholders seeking to address the climate change and mobility nexus. The third action plan of the task force will be fully aligned with the second work plan of the UN Network of Migration, given that the planning cycles of both have now aligned, and there is an opportunity to further align with the Paris Agreement and the Global Compact for Migration implementation that links the two workspaces and its plan of action. The third action plan of the task force identifies deliverables that will contribute to implement the previous recommendations and the products to be endorsed by the ExCom. It will strive towards technical guidance and capacity building for partners, building on the advocacy and research outputs of the first work plan and the relevant guidance that has been developed in other expert groups and its knowledge. Our activities will also include consultations with stakeholders from both climate change and migration spheres, and importantly, the other expert groups. Finally, the TFD work plan will build upon the technical submissions of its members on the technical assistance provided to developing countries for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climate change, as catalyzed by the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage. We have seen in the WIM report that this includes risk mapping, assessments, analysis, early warnings, anticipatory action, risk finance, insurance, and contingency measures, but policy and legal frameworks and plans to support those, and nature-based solutions. All these areas are linked to human mobility, all need a cohesive, comprehensive, and complementary approach. To close, I would like to highlight that since we have and may have some members of the TFD in the audience, I would welcome them to complement this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. That was such a rich exchange of information. Would you agree? Yes, I heard very clearly coming out the value of science and how science has been able to inform the work on comprehensive risk management and advances made in displacement, human mobility. And also collaboration and coherence came out quite clearly as well. We heard the various partners that are involved. We also heard very clearly that this was not done in isolation, but it was about responding to the needs of countries. And if we can tie that back to why we're here, you know, this is a COP that speaks to Together for Implementation, and implementation talks about action. So we're very grateful to our two experts and also to our country representatives for being here and for sharing so freely. But let's also get back to everyone here. We had a question at the start. Let's see what your responses were. Can we have the word cloud now being shown? Sorry, I have to turn. So on the first question, what areas of comprehensive... there we go. What areas of comprehensive risk management do countries need support on? And I think they're teasing us. So we're seeing very clearly the issue of data collection coming out, risk assessment, mapping, financing, technologies, disaster displacement risk, simulations, education, infrastructure, contingency financing, policy development, early warning systems, funding coming out there again, addressing impact, assessment, implementation. We thank you very much for sharing on these. There was a second question. And then on the next question, what aspects of climate-induced displacement require enhanced support in your country or region? And here, right in the middle, we're seeing political commitments, needs assessment. I think needs assessment is coming out again very clearly there. Technical guidance, labor migration. I'm seeing GCF engagement, and I assume that links with funding and finance. There is support, water security, flooding, policy guidance, long-term planning, reaching the most vulnerable, coordination, durable solutions, and we are seeing data coming back out there. We very much appreciate you participating in the word cloud. But what I will do now is perhaps to invite our panelists to reflect on the responses that you have provided, and then you will later have an opportunity to reflect further on these questions and also from the information that was shared by our panelists. So anyone wants to take the floor first to give any quick reflections or reactions on this?
Thank you. I think those are very important questions, and I see needs assessment, data collection, and policy guidance. Those are a few major areas countries has actually suggested that this could be the answer to those questions. If you allow me to reflect on my own understanding, I think we have enough understanding at the Warsaw International Mechanism, at the UNFCCC process. I think it is the most important thing that we develop our policy guidelines and we establish some sort of institutional arrangement at the national level and start implementation of whatever we understand, how to address those areas. And that is the most important thing. And also funding was also highlighted by the colleagues. And I think we should take the opportunity of this technical assistance that was suggested during the Glasgow Pact outcome. So we should take support from different funding agencies and start implementation of different activities at the national level. I think it is the national level where we really can start implementation, and that will benefit our grassroots people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. Any of our panelists, please?
Yes. Thank you so much. So I see that we all agree on the main gaps that we need to stress on. So actually I see like the funding is repeated with different languages, and actually this is really important. And as you know, in the negotiations we always stuck at this point when we try to identify how much funding we need and how to access this funding and how to enhance the capacity of the developing countries in order to address loss and damage. And this is actually like a gap, and there is, as I see, there is a gap in data also, and it was highlighted by the participants too. And the technical capacity is needed, and I think like the ExCom and the experts groups under the ExCom can support us in this regard in enhancing the technical capacity of the developing countries to help in assessing our needs and to get ready for trying to reduce the losses. And as the IPCC, the latest report of the working group 2, they said, even though we are making adaptation, we still cannot stop the losses and damages. So we're still lagging behind this, and we need to work on that. And thanks to the participants that we share the same needs and gaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other of our panelists would like to reflect?
Thank you, Lehan. We think it's now time to scale up everything. We have been thinking, we have making policies for years, and now we have no time left to address climate change issues, loss and damage issues. But for a countries like Mozambique, which is African, an African poor country, is also a member of the LDCs. The finance, it's a very big issue to implement all those actions that we put in the policies. So I think our main issue at the moment is to spread the early warning systems for all the country, but of course we have this limitation in finance. The other thing that I think it's important is to bring to the table other relevant actors in this process. We have, of course, the government, we have the humanitarian country teams, we have other non-government organizations, but I think the religious leaders are a very important group in this issue, because for countries like mine in Mozambique, many of these vulnerable people believe more in the religious leaders than in the government. So I think it's time to the government to bring them to the table to discuss these issues and ensure the better implementation of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have just a few more minutes left before we have to conclude. So it's now over to you. Do you have any views and comments? Do we have a roaming microphone that we could use? Yeah, at the front here.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for this great panel. So you have
Sorry,
asked.
please introduce yourself.
Yes, so I'm Isabel Kronos. I work for ILO as a labor migration specialist, And I would like to thank Manuel for presenting the work of the Task Force on Displacement, and pass a message on behalf of Michelle Leiten, who is the chief of the Labor Migration Branch. Michelle will be traveling to the COP tomorrow, and yeah, so just to mention, from ILO's side, we also would like to underline the importance of labor mobility, and the importance or the need for regular pathways that recognize the need to grant access to the labor market, to enhance decent work, and also to strengthen protection of those displaced by climate change. So on Saturday, we will be launching a policy brief on labor mobility and just transitions towards environmentally sustainable economies, which will pick up this issue, and we will be very happy to feed into the work of the Task Force on Displacement, building on this policy brief. Also, we are very happy as ILO to co-chair the working group on climate change and migration under the Global UN Network on Migration, and we will be very happy to further contribute. And as also mentioned, we have a number of side events on climate change and human mobility at this COP. We will have 3 side events from ILO's side focusing on labor mobility and climate change. One tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the Climate Mobility Pavilion, focusing on a multi-partner project on climate change and migration in the IGAD region, and 2 side events on Saturday, one at 10 a.m. and one at 5:45. So we hope to see many of you there and to continue the discussion on the importance of labor mobility. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. Do we have anyone else that wants to make a comment, intervention, to reflect on the ExCom's work plan, to reflect on what we heard from our country representatives, or from the plans of actions of the 2 expert groups represented on the panel, or from the comments that you would have made through the 2 questions? We're friends and colleagues, no need to be shy.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Polo Dri Dogmo. I'm from Cameroon. I'm the coordinator of the African Environmental Network and also the member of the Lost and Damaged Youth Coalition. I wanted to know where is the place of the youth within the new action plan. And we have a demand in the frame of the Lost and Damaged Youth Coalition. We want the establishment of the Youth Advisory Committee on Loss and Damage, and an inclusive, which have to be inclusive, mindful, and develop a fear. So we wanted it first, and then we want also a kind of inclusive approach within the new plan. And I have to stop there for the moment. Maybe by the end I will come back. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. We heard quite a bit before about collaboration, engagement, partnerships, and certainly youth is an important stakeholder for loss and damage. The youth are not only voices that we need to listen to, but also those who will inherit whatever the future holds. Certainly, we encourage youth to participate in the WIM ExCom meetings and various activities. And what I was very happy with in our approach this year is that we had an opportunity to invite everyone who could to contribute to the work plan that was presented here. We had, for example, World Cafes, and we also had an opportunity where different expert groups with various membership to also make that contribution. So we encourage you to follow the WIM ExCom, to register as an observer and make your voice known. So again, we appreciate your intervention. With that said, we have 5 minutes. So Kaisa, and then, okay, so we have 3 more interventions and then we will conclude.
Thank you very much. My name is Kaisa. I'm from Sweden and I'm a member of the WIM ExCom and one of the 2 co-chairs of the task force for displacement. So I'm not going to repeat all the great work that we have already heard about from the task force of displacement, but I really think it shows what this process can catalyze, that we have set up a task force for displacement as parties in this process, but it has led to a lot of work in other processes and on the ground in countries. And I think the task force has been up and running for a long time now, and I think it's a really good example of the point of what this process can achieve and what we want to achieve with all our experts group as they develop as well. So I just wanted to make that point. And then I was eager to come in on the youth point as well, because in the task force for displacement, our youth delegate from Yango was just renewed. So we have had a seat for the Yango constituency for many, many years in the task force, and we just got information that we have a new representative from Yango in that group. In addition to that, in the non-economic losses expert group, there's also a seat for Yango on that group. So I think it's a clear intention from the WIM ExCom, so I have a strong kind of youth voice in our discussions. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Kaisa. Can we?
Thank you very much. My name is Michelle. I'm from UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and I'm here today on behalf of Andrew Harper, who's also a member of the Task Force on Displacement. Thank you very much, Manuel, for giving such a great overview. I'd actually like to spend the time I have just very quickly to highlight 2 big points. First of all, I think it's really encouraging from our point of view to see the financing issue for loss and damage on the agenda. And we hear again and again from our country, the countries where we're working, from the people on the ground as well as the governments, how important it is to get that finance into the most vulnerable countries and for the people in the most vulnerable situations. So looking forward to hearing more coming from the ExCom, coming out of the COP on that issue. Secondly, the issue of inclusion, the gentleman who raised the issue of youth, and Kaisa also on the role of Yungo, absolutely. Certainly in our role in the task force on displacement, we'll be looking to see as well how we can be including much more the voices of displaced persons themselves. Here at the COP, we've got some events where we are bringing in indeed tomorrow a couple of IDPs, a couple of refugees, so people whose displacement may not be primarily about conflict, but whose displacement may be partly to do with the impacts of extreme weather events, or who are in situations where they're extremely vulnerable to climate shocks, refugees, for example. So again, I think this is such an interesting discussion. It's increasing its complexity and sophistication, and I think therefore its meaningfulness for us to be able to get right down to the local level, because each situation has its own specific issues and challenges, and we really have to be understanding that much, much better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final, we're a little out of time, but if, not you, Animesh. No, Animesh, you're first.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I know we don't
please
have a
go
lot of
ahead.
time, so very quickly, 3 quick points. I think as we're moving forward, and it's very heartening to note that if I look at the last work plan that we had and achievements, and the way the work plan this time has been shaped, I think we're getting more and more substantive in all the work plans, and in particular, Zonke, thank you for explaining it so well in terms of summarizing, but I really see that we're moving towards the substance. Now, having just facilitated the World Cafe for the GST loss and damage segment, and following that discussion very well. There are three questions coming up very clearly from those discussions. One, do we know what do we mean by comprehensive risk management? And especially at the higher policy shapers, policy decision makers level, is there an understanding? Second, do we know how much we are losing? What are the matrix of loss and damages, and how can that be compared against a climate action? And third, do we have the right coherent policy basis in the countries to achieve what we want to achieve? The answer to all these three questions are actually in the work plan of, at least for Tech CRM, and we're working closely with other expert groups as well. So for example, building on the comprehensive risk assessment guideline that has been developed in the previous work plan of Tech CRM, a new guideline is being developed that will apply climate information better for planning purposes. That's a joint work between UNDRR and WMO. Second, in terms of the matrix, loss and damage databases exist at the local level. It's being transformed completely, and at the end of this month, 29-30, a technical forum will be organized in Bonn, especially on this topic. And first, a leadership module is being developed that will address the ministerial level understanding on comprehensive risk management so that we can move forward better on this. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Animesh Kumar. I'm the head of UNDRR office based in Bonn and a member of Tech CRM.
Yes, thank you. You have a few seconds.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. My name is Atle Solberg. I'm head of the Secretariat of the Platform on Disaster Displacement, PDD. We are currently led by the European Union as our chair. So we are also a proud member of the Task Force on Displacement, TFD. I just wanted to thank Manuel for a great presentation and also the reflection of the group we are together as a task force. Michelle said something about financing. That's a key message. There must be more financing to avert, minimize, and address displacement. Another wish from our side is we need also a framework under which to coordinate and work. And I think the best, or whatever you can do to establish or have the Santiago network on loss and damage being established and start to work, that will help the work of us as expert group. And that will be strengthening coordination and strategic work on these issues. So maybe if we can hope for that, by the end of this COP, we have a Santiago network on loss and damage that can start catalyzing the support, and we stand ready to provide that to you as member of the experts group. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please, let's give everyone a round of applause. I think this was a very rich exchange amongst ourselves, and we certainly do appreciate you, the audience, for being here as well. A side event is not a side event without you all. So thank you once again. Thanks to our amazing panelists, and we look forward to when next we meet. Take care and bye, everyone. Hello, everyone. For your troubles, we have some snacks at the back of the room, so please enjoy.